everyone, and welcome to today's Free Training Thursday. Today I have with me Darren Juby here, and he will be presenting Precedents in Amicus Attorney. As a reminder, you can find a copy of this webinar on our website at www.abacusnext.com/webinars. If you have any questions, please save them till the end, and we'll be able to answer as many as possible. Now, without further ado, I will turn it over to Darren.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, depending on your time zone. My name is Darren. As she had stated, I'm a product trainer here with Amicus Next, covering our Amicus Attorney products. And today we're going to, given our 30-minute time frame here, we're going to do a very high-level overview of precedents. We're going to talk about creating a new precedent from scratch. We'll talk about working with precedents. We'll talk about creating a new precedent based on an existing one. We'll also briefly talk about editing and applying a precedent, and we'll touch upon predefining task-based billing codes in a precedent, and we will also touch upon using variables within our precedents. So lots to cover. So without further ado, let's get started here. You should see my Amicus Attorney office here right now. I will go to my Files module, and I've already prepared some items here, so I'll just show you this. If I open up my file details and go to the events brad, you will see that I've already got some linked events here. I've got a court date appointment. I have a pretrial conference appointment. I have a prepare for conference to do, a bill my client to do, and a report to client to do. I will show you the relationship between all of these here momentarily. If I wanted to create a new precedent based upon these items, what I would do is click on the first one. Holding my Shift key, I will click on the last one to highlight them all. If there was events in between that I didn't want to select, what I could do is just holding the Control key on my keyboard, I can click on one or many. But in this case, like I said, I'm going to use the Shift, and we're going to grab all of those. And I'll go to the Precedents menu here, as you can see right here. And we're going to say Save as a Precedent. At this point, it would ask me for a precedent name, so I could just put in something like this. And I could designate what I want the firm member assignments on the events to be. Do I want it to be all to the same person or same people? I could select my firm members from here if I wanted to. I could say same as original, including me, or I could simply say same as original. And what that will do is that will refer to the roles on the file for both the client, or the contact, if you will, and the firm member or firm members. I would say OK. And of course, it would bring me to my precedent profile. So as you can see here, we could adjust the name if we so choose. We could also put a description in. And here is a breakdown of the appointments and the events on this particular precedent. You will see it all starts with the master event here. If I double click on that, just to show you, there is the linking there. Precedents can also use unlinked events, so it's not necessary to always have them linked. I just did so for this particular example. So you'll see if I was to put this in play, whatever date I would pick for the appointment for the court, it's going to create this to-do 2 days after the fact. This particular to-do would get created 1 day after this one is marked done. This appointment here gets created 5 days in the past from the date I've selected for the court date. And this to-do is 15 days in the past from that particular date. This will all make a little more sense as we apply it. In this case, you'll see where the events or the precedent was applied. I selected June the 27th for the court date. So with that, you will see that the pretrial conference appointment was set for 5 days before that, June the 22nd. The to-do to prepare for the conference was set 15 days in the past, so June the 12th. The report to client to-do is set for June the 29th, 2 days after that. And then, of course, this one does not have a date right now because it is dependent upon this to-do being marked as done. Now, let's talk about working with precedents. So in the event I'm just going to save and close this. Let's say I wanted to create a new file. I'm just going to leave it as so. We'll add a contact on there, and we'll say save and open. I can go to the events brad. Notice I don't have anything currently here. I'm going to click on the Precedents button here, and I will select Use Precedent. As well, I could go to the Actions menu, hover over Precedent, and I could select Use. This is going to bring up our Precedents profile window, selecting Precedents. In this case, I'm going to select the court workflow. I can either double-click on it or use this arrow to move it over. And I'm going to say same as original based on role on file. We will say OK. And when we do, it's going to ask us for the dates for our master event. In this case, I'm going to set it in July, and we'll set it for July the 25th. I will say, then click OK. And now, as you can see, it has created my events for me. There's my master event, the court appointment, July the 25th. There's the report to client to do 2 days afterwards. There's the pretrial conference, 5 days in advance. There's the to-do for preparing for the conference, 15 days in advance. And there, of course, is the bill for client to do. And that will, of course, get a date once I have marked this particular to-do here as being done. Now, if I wanted to create a new precedent based upon an existing one, what I could do is if I go to the Precedents menu here, we'll select Use Precedent again. I'll be back at the Select Precedents profile screen here. In this case, I've selected Court Workflow. I'm going to click on Edit. And you'll see down here at the bottom that I've got an option to create a new precedent profile based on this one named. So I could give it a name. In this case, we'll just call it Test 2. Save as. And then I could either select Save and Use, which will apply it to the file I'm currently on, or I can simply click on Save, and that will save that precedent. As you can see here, it is now listed here. And if I toggle between all firm precedents or only a precedents associated with me, you'll see there's currently no difference. If there was precedents created by other users in the firm, if I toggled on this, they would then show in this list. By default, this is only showing lists associated with my particular user profile in Amicus Attorney. So I'm just going to cancel on that for the time being here. We'll talk about editing and applying a precedent. I will get to everybody's questions at the end here, given time. So please don't fret. I do see a couple of one for sure has come up there already. So we'll cover that here shortly. I want to make sure we cover all of our information out beforehand. So my apologies, but like I said, we'll get to that. And if there's not enough time, I will follow up accordingly, Charles. So with that said, let's go here. I'm just going to go back to the precedents and we'll select Use Precedent again. If I want to edit a precedent, let's take this one for instance. I'll click on the Edit button. So from here, I could add to my precedent or I could simply edit the options that I already have here. So for instance, let's go to this Bill for Client. I just want to show you guys the linking that I've done here. So for instance, you will see that I just simply double-clicked on that to bring this information up. There is the master event, report to client. Here is the to-do for billing my client. It is the dependent event. You will note that I have set it to schedule the dependent event 1 day after the master event and set its deadline for 10 days after that. That's an optional toggle. I don't need to necessarily have that on there, but you will see here that I've based on the master event being marked done. So until that to-do is marked done, this is not getting scheduled. That's why we see that nil date in there currently. If I did want to add something to here, I could simply click on the new option. From here, I would be able to dictate what I want it to do. I could say on particular files, I could say give me an appointment that is dated for or since and so forth. As you can see, based on those search criteria, I do not have anything coming up. Let's say before today. Currently nothing as well. So let's see if it picks up anything after. So if I had events that would meet these criteria, they would show up here. Just going to say cancel on there. And of course, to apply the precedent, you guys saw how I did that already, but just to go over it again, if we go here and select use precedent or go to the actions menu, precedent and use, we could apply this precedent simply by going like so. Again, I'm going to say same as original based on role on file, and we'll click OK on that. It's going to ask us to select our dates. I'll just leave it as today for now. And there you can see that it has created the events, and you'll see in this particular case, this one is already showing up as late based on the dates that we selected. So I'm just going to close that. I don't want to save those changes. I want to briefly talk about predefining the task-based billing codes on a precedent. So let me just go back into here. We will go to events, and again, we will go to use precedent. So here, I just want to edit this, and I'm just going to show you guys briefly what I've done here already. Okay, so let's see here. This one, for instance, if I double click on this, it'll open up the event details. If I go down here to task and activity codes, this option is only available when you're editing events that are within a precedent profile. If you are creating a brand new event on the calendar or a brand new task from the tasks module, you will not see this. It's only activated and unhidden, if you will, once we are in the editing of a precedent. So if I click on there, you will see where I could pre-select task-based billing codes for time entry, simply clicking on this icon to do so. So in this case, I've selected court-mandated conference. And in this case, I've selected plan and prepare for. So if I was to do a time entry for this particular event, you will see that these values are already pre-populated for me. And okay, let's just cancel out of there. The one last thing I wanted to briefly touch upon, and then I will create one from scratch legitimately and not something that I've already put into place. So let's talk about variables. So using precedent variables, we can do some pretty amazing things. And I just want to give a couple of examples here. So precedents will allow for us to use the variables in the event title and the main notes fields. So let me edit this one. And if I bring this up, so you will see here where I have set this one in particular up to use the variables. So you'll see in the title, we use the double-angled brackets to begin and close the variable. And in this case, I called it witness X. So I want you to see what happens as well. You'll see here in the main note, I put this is in regards to open the angled brackets, witness X, closing the angled brackets, and their case. I'm going to say OK on that. And let's just cancel this. I'm going to create a brand new file so you guys can see this. No. And we'll just say Mr. Pendergast, and we will click Save and Open. So again, I will go to the Events Brad, and I will go to the Precedents button, and I will select Use Precedent. This time I'm going to use the variables precedent, and I want you guys to watch what happens. You'll notice a little bit of differentiation as to what happens when I click on the OK. The first time we applied a precedent, we were asked to select the date for the master event. In this case, we're going to be asked a couple of things. So as I click OK, you will see that the first pane that comes up for me is the Precedents Replace Variable text window. So given that I only have the one variable in this particular example of witness X, you will see where I have the replace with column. So wherever I want to replace that variable, I'm going to give it Agent Pendergast, and I will click on the next arrow. Now I will select my dates, and I put this one into August, so we will say the 22nd, and I will say OK. So you will notice there is the particular event that we had the variables on. I'm going to open up the event details just so you can see clearer. So you'll see that instead of having the opening of the angled brackets and the closing with witness X, it has replaced it with what I input, Agent Pendergast. Let us look at the main note and we'll see the same thing. So that is just a brief example of what we can do with variables. There is so much more that we could dedicate an entire training session just to the variables alone, I feel. And on top of that, we could easily fill an hour, if not two, if we were simply talking precedents. So to combine the two within a 30-minute window, as you can see, would be fairly difficult. But I do see that Caroline had requested that I show you guys how we do this from scratch. And what I'm going to try to do is incorporate Charles's question in there as well. He had asked about having odd filing deadlines, for example, the third Friday before the week in which a court hearing is scheduled. Let's try to do as close to that as we can. So it would be the third Friday before the week. Okay. So let's, I'm just going to close this file. Let's create a brand new one. We'll say no on this. I'm going to select our contact, and we will open our file. So let's go to Events, and let's create a new event. We will create this as an appointment, and we will call it Court Date. And we'll just leave it as such for the time being. Does not matter about the dates that we've selected currently because we're simply going to be using these for our precedent. So let's now create another event. We'll make this a to-do. And what we will do is let's call this Prep for Court. And let's see how close we can get to what Charles was requesting. So let's say we'll go with links. Let's say new. I'm going to say yes on that to save the changes. So here's our court date. I'm going to make that the master. Let's say OK. So what I want to do, as you can see, Prep for Court is the dependent event. The court date is the master event. I want this scheduled three weeks before the master event. That might be as close as I can get to that for you, Charles. I'd have to look into that a little further. So let's just say save on that. So this one is going to be scheduled 3 weeks in advance to this. So let's say OK on that. And then let's create one more to do. We will say follow up with client. And let's link this one as well. So again, because I haven't yet saved it, it's going to ask me to do so before I can create a link. So I will say yes. In this case, again, I'm going to use the court date as the master event. And this one, I want to occur 3 days after the master event. And let's say that we'll schedule its deadline 10 days after that. Okay, and let's create one more so I can show you guys how I got to this point. I will click New. One more to do. And much like what I did in the original example, I'm going to link this one to this follow-up client just to show you guys how I did that. So again, I will say yes on this. This time, I am going to make
But I'll be mindful of that, right? So next time that you probably put you two minutes down. I didn't go so.
we'll just make it list off that. Actually, no, let's put it off with this one. And as you can see, cannot link an event to itself. Please define another link. So it will stop us from making silly mistakes, but just bear with me here.
You know when you're on your back?
So let's add this guy here. And in this case, I want this to be the master event, follow up with the client. So you'll see that I've made this to do, which I should have titled better, but it is now the dependent event. And I want it to be scheduled once this is marked as done. And I want it to occur one day after I mark that done. So I would then say save. Say OK. So as you can see, that does not currently have a date until I was to mark this as done. I will select all of these, just like so, holding the Shift key. Go to Precedents, and I would say Save as Precedent. In this case, we will call this Test 3. I want it to retain the same as the original, and let's say OK. As you can see, now I have this here, showing us our to-dos and our appointments, and I will save that. And that, if I then wanted to use it, I could go here, and as you can see, that is now available as an option for me to select here. And that, ladies and gentlemen, in a very high level, is creating and utilizing precedents. I know we covered a lot in a very short span. For that, I do apologize. But this is one of those topics where it's very easy to spend a lot of time going through